Chapter 3 Gulliver in Lilliput. This is an extract taken from Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. A Voyage of Lilliput. Gulliver studied medicine at Cambridge. He later got married and settled in London. He was a surgeon in 2 ships and made several voyages to the East and West Indies, and now rode on. The last of these voyages not proving very fortunate. After 3 years, I accepted an offer from Captain William Pritchard, master of the Antelope, who was making a voyage to the South Seas. We set sail from Bristol, May 4th, 1699. Our voyage at first was very prosperous. In our passage to the East Indies, we were driven by a violent storm to the northwest of Van Diemen's Land. 12 of our crew were dead by hard labor and bad food. The rest were in a weak condition. On the 5th of November, it was the beginning of summer in those parts. The weather was hazy. The seamen saw a rock within half a cable's length of the ship. The wind was so strong that we were driven directly upon it and immediately split. 6 of the crew, of whom I was one, having let down the boat into the sea, made a shift to get clear of the ship and the rock. We rowed till we were able to work no longer. We therefore trusted ourselves to the mercy of the waves, and in about half an hour the boat was overset by a sudden flurry from the north. What became of my companions I cannot tell, but I conclude they were lost. For my own part, I swam as fortune directed me and was pushed forward by wind and tide. It had been a long swim. I found myself within my depths, and by this time the storm was less furious. I walked nearly a mile before I got to the shore. I found myself much inclined to sleep. I lay on the grass, which was very short and soft, where I slept soundly. When I awoke, it was just daylight. I attempted to rise, but was not able to stir. I found my arms and legs were strongly fastened on each side to the ground, and my hair, which was long and thick, tied down in the same manner. I likewise felt several slender strings across my body, from my armpits to my thighs. I could only look upwards. The sun began to grow hot, and the light hurt my eyes. I heard a confused voice about me, but I could see nothing except the sky. In a little time, I felt something alive move on my left leg, which advancing gently over my breast, came almost up to my chin. I perceived it to be a human creature not 6 inches high, with a bow and arrow in his hands, and a quiver at his back. In the meantime, I felt at least 40 more of the same kind following the first. I was astonished and roared so loud that they all ran back in a fright. However, they soon returned, and one of them cried out in a shrill but distinct voice, "Hekina Degel." The others repeated the same words several times, but I then did not know what they meant. I lay all this while in great uneasiness. At length, struggling to get loose, I had the fortune to break the strings. At the same time, with a violent pull, which gave me much pain, I loosened the strings that tied down my hair on the left side. But the creatures ran off a second time before I could catch them. Immediately, I felt above 100 arrows discharged on my left hand, which pricked me like so many needles. They also shot another flight into the air, as we do bombs in Europe. When this shower of arrows was over, I felt great pain. By good luck, I had on me a buff jerkin, which they could not pierce. I thought it was wise to lie still. When the people observed I was quiet, they discharged no more arrows. They assembled in great numbers. I heard a knocking for about an hour, like that of people at work. When turning my head that way, as well as the pegs and strings would permit me, I saw a stage erected. about 1.5 feet from the ground, capable of holding 4 of our inhabitants, with 2 or 3 ladders to mount it. One of them made me a long speech, which I did not understand. After a while, about 50 of the inhabitants came and cut the strings that fastened the left side of my head, which gave me the liberty of turning it to the right, and of observing the person that was to speak. He appeared to be middle-aged, and taller than any of the other 3 who attended him. One of them was a page that held up his train, and seemed to be somewhat longer than my middle finger. The other 2 stood one on each side to support him. He acted the part of an orator, and I could observe many periods of threatenings, and answered in a few words, but in the meekest manner. I lifted up my left hand, and being hungry, having not eaten a morsel for some hours before I left the ship, I put my finger to my mouth to signify that I wanted food. The Hergo understood me very well. Well, he descended from the stage. He commanded that several ladders should be applied to my sides, on which over 100 of the inhabitants mounted and walked towards my mouth, laden with baskets full of meat, which had been provided and sent thither by the king's orders upon the first intelligence he received